In the spirit of reconciliation, we acknowledge the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea, and community. We pay our respects to their elders, past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today.
Hi, this is Materialise, the Launch Tabletop Podcast, where we talk about turning game ideas into tangible objects. Today is the 2nd of December 2022, and this is episode 5. Hi, I'm your host, Eris, and with me, as usual, is Kate. Hi, Kate.
Hello.
And for the first time, making his debut, what's the right way of saying that? Is Alan Chang.
G'day.
Alan Chang, who's got a full name on his thing, but Kate and I don't have a full name on our thing, so we're more, mysterious. How's it going,
That
Alan?
literally is my full name. I don't have a middle name, so that's all of it.
Oh, there you go. There's a fact for us to put into a trivia deck in the future about, the company.
It's not important to anyone, I don't know.
And also joining us is our special guest, Steve D of Tin Star Games. Hi, Steve.
Hello.
Well, if we're going by the longest letters, I think Steve wins.
Definitely.
So Steve and I both live in the same city, and we managed to, which is Sydney, and we attended a playtesting event this week, which was my first time ever going to it. Have you been to it before, Steve?
We were doing it just before COVID hit, back in 2018. So I think it was, and then we've done it 3 times since then. I've been once since it's been back, so that's been really good. It's
wonderful.
Taken a bit of effort to get it back onto the books. I think people have lost the habit, and as we remarked on the night, it can be difficult to get people to travel around in Sydney. We're actually a really decentralized city, and so
the geography is against you if you're trying to organize a central event.
Exactly, yeah. But we're getting good numbers, so it's great.
Yeah, they seem to be pretty good. So we both hung out and saw each other, and I think I just said earlier before we started recording, I think it's the first time I've seen Steve in person in probably years. I don't even...
3 years
maybe
it
would have been probably PAX just before COVID, maybe PAX 2019.
Yeah.
Maybe. So anyway, PAX Melbourne I'm talking about, PAX Australia. Okay, so Kate, has anything board game related happened in your world recently?
Well, I work for a board games company, so most of what I do probably counts. Have I played anything? No.
That's all right. That happens. You got board games behind you. I guess that's the most important part.
I do.
Sorry?
Just touching them is enough. Just rubbing up.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes, just admiring them from a distance.
I definitely feel like, just like is true of so many other hobbies, like sometimes collecting the thing is its own hobby, and using the thing, like reading the book or playing the game, is another hobby, like separate from collecting them. Anyway, Alan, how about you? Any board game related stuff happening for you?
Yes, I do. Unfortunately, I accidentally left it just behind, so give me 1 second.
Okay. Well, we can literally see him running into the background. Yeah, that's funny. We had about, 12, 15 people maybe there on Tuesday? Oh, here we go, Alan's back.
There was enough for
I've been trusting games onto my children.
Cool. Okay.
That is a great little game.
We was submitted through the TGDA Rising Stars competition. Santorini, which is a family favorite.
Nice.
Stoked, which is the winner of the Rising Star. I don't have a physical copy. We play it on digital, as well as this is one that the kids always ask to play, and I have yet to. Stunned by a good friend, Dan May, and the design team
Lovely.
that's worked on it. yeah, the kids has been really wanted to play that. I haven't learned the rules yet.
So was that through Quillsilver, the dog park, or was that another agency
It's
that they
Redwood
like?
Games. So
Okay.
they're kind of newish, self-published designers, but Coolsilver helped with that particular project.
Okay,
Right.
Yeah,
fantastic.
and yeah, my children are utterly enjoying a lot of these games. So one of the I guess huge benefits of the Rising Star Game Award is that my kids are now finally being exposed to more Australian designed indie games that hasn't actually, they can't really just find that anywhere. It's something that is exclusive to the work that I do, that I get to enjoy these kind of stuff, and I'm absolutely loving it.
So for those that don't know, earlier in the year, the Tabletop Game Designers Australia and Launch Tabletop, and I'm not sure who else was in the organisation or sponsorship of the award. VR Distribution ran an award for a local Australian game design award. And how many entries was there in the end for that?
I forget. 15.
Yeah.
Something about 15, and then there were about 10 finalists.
Yeah, because I think you were one of the judges. Is that right, Steve?
Yes, I was a judge. Yeah.
Yeah. And Launch Tabletop obviously helps. So Alan and Kate did a lot of work with actually making the thing happen. Awesome. All right, let's move on. So each week we do a launch table tip where someone from our team will share a bit of advice. But this week we're doing something a bit different, and Kate has a question for us.
So I know that the cat is making herself at home. I know that two of us went to a playtesting event this week, which made me think about if you are doing playtesting or you're attending an event, what do you take with you? What's in your kit of essential items? Steve, do you have
That's a good question.
Kit that you take?
I think it's really important to take notes. I often just use my phone, but it's better sometimes to have a pen and paper because that's better for your brain. So yeah, I have a notepad that I pretty much take everywhere, and all my ideas go in it. Yep. And then not only have I got them for later, I've got them for way later. When I get to the end of a book, I sort of look back and go, is there something I've missed? Is there something I've forgotten? You can see ideas evolving. It's a bit like a sketchbook. And you can also, that means you don't miss things, or you can go back and go, oh, we forgot about that, or did we do all of this? And it also helps you see that, how your ideas progress, which can be good. To just go, oh yeah, look, that was when I first had that idea, and now it's turned into this, and that's very useful. So, pen and something to write on is the most important thing. But a journal or a notebook is a really good idea.
Yep. Alan, how about you? What do you like to take?
I do. I have to go get it again. I'm just trying to make this very.
All right, well,
Alan's turning this into like a treasure hunt podcast.
Yeah, that's right.
Scavenger hunt, yeah.
And then I'll come back.
All right, Eris.
Okay. I've got a few things. So I have the notebook. Now, I used to only use my phone or an iPad and just take digital notes. But recently I've started, I just realized my phone number is on the front of this book because I'm old school and decided to do that. So basically I bought this notebook, and I bought it mostly because I remember the brand from when I was a kid, and I saw it at the shops and I thought, oh, I'll buy that one. But what's been handy about this particular one is the pages can tear out, so they're perforated. But the notebook is really good, and it's also been good for me just to take much more detailed notes. So like when I'm playtesting, I've been like, okay, how many coins were used, how many pieces were actually used during the game and or left unused during the game. So that's been useful. I have 3 other things, though, that I would consider almost essential to me these days. Water. I try and take water with me whenever I go to places, especially if I'm not certain if I'll be able to buy a drink or anything while I'm there, because obviously hydration is important. Equally, I've been lately... Yeah, well, on that note, I've also been having to have lozenges because my throat's been getting sore when I'm doing talking or whatever, and some of these playtest events can go for a number of hours, so... That's something that's been important to me. I guess it's a sign of the times, but also just me, some kind of wet wipes, just to in case something needs wiping down. Oh, sorry, I tapped my microphone. The other things, though, that I take, which I don't take to every playtest session, but I kind of think of, I made them a few years ago, and I use them, especially if I'm traveling interstate or somewhere where I don't have access to my stuff at home. Basically, I've just got a couple of little kits, like game design kits, where, like, so this is just some kind of, like, I don't know, fishing tackle box type thing, but it's just got a
Sharpie in there.
Oh boy, I just dropped something.
What looks like some cubes.
Yeah.
I see some Monopoly money.
Yeah, this one's a mess. This has also got pieces from a ripped apart game of Risk Legacy. With just some little pieces. So I've got little like miniature things if I just wanted to do something. But the main one that I have is actually this kind of, again, another kind of like crafty tackle boxy type thing, and this just has all colored cubes in it and some dice and some meeples, and basically this one's really handy, especially if I'm at events where there's other game designers, because guaranteed someone's like, we're playtesting their game and they'll be like, oh, if only I had 3 red cubes, we could try and test this idea or whatever, and I've just found it really helpful to have that bunch of cubes. If you're looking for cheap cubes and things like that, counting cubes from teaching supply shops is where I've gotten mine. So in Australia, there's a company called Modern Teaching Age, which I've bought a bunch from, but I'm sure you can get most places. But and there are dedicated also game component places to buy bits and pieces from. Spiel Material and Meeple Source are 2 really good ones. But so for me, it's kind of like the practical stuff is the lozenges, the water. The more elaborate stuff is these little kits, and I do find the fishing tackle boxes or sewing. What are they called, Kate? Like, are they just called sewing kits? Like, I don't know, things. Yeah, things you put like buttons in and like stuff that anything with little compartments. I think is really handy, and you can chuck together your own little thing.
Cool.
I talked the longest, of course I did.
I have a box like that, but at the moment it's just way too big to carry around. So I need to make a smaller version because you're absolutely right. And my friend Sean actually made a beautiful little thing that's a little mint tin size thing that is the Pocket Game Designer's Kit. I do carry that with me. It's got stickers and sticky notes, pencils, little pieces.
I was going to say, is a golf pencil in there? Because that would fit perfectly.
Yeah.
Sean's kit, it's a really clever idea, and I haven't yet raised it with our team at Launch Tabletop, but it's definitely on my mind to speak to him and see if there's some collaboration we could do, because his that kit is a really nifty idea. Yeah.
Cool.
I think the 2 tools that I have that I want to showcase hasn't been mentioned yet. These are things that are really important for like last minute cutting or last minute gluing. So just give me a second while I bring it up. This guy, it's a concrete tool, 12 volt, 12 amps. It's really good for cutting anything, really.
I'm gonna have a heart attack.
And then you've got my trusty Passload framing gun for stuff into your thing. So imagine you've got 2 cards that you want to fix together. Framing gun would be absolutely wonderful.
And I assume they're battery powered, so you don't need to plug them into the wall.
Yeah, of course, you got to be
battery beautiful.
Powered, Yeah, I always get that stuff.
Wonderful.
Sorry, as you can see, the prototyping I've been doing is for home renovation. So, but the sentiment, even though it's a joke, the sentiment is still the case. Scissors and glue and stuff like that can be useful.
Yeah. I that's right. I definitely find having a stack of cards that I can draw on, like other blank cards or ones that I don't care about, with a Sharpie can be really helpful.
Just look at this beauty again. It's amazing. I just recently got this.
That grey board that you make, tokens and stuff from, that's really hard to get through with outstanding.
Classic.
What I have in my kit is a little different because I don't design games and I don't develop games, although I have done a little bit of helping with stuff. I take always my gigantic art diary because it gives me all of my, this is 6 months worth of stuff. I file them so I can go back 7 years and see what I was doing, which can be really interesting. I've got various writing implements. I take a couple of fluoros, things like that, but I also take my phone because I can video people playing. I can see how they're using stuff because I'm more interested in how they use things than whether they're playing a game as intended. So being able to watch somebody hold their cards or see how they're arranging things on the table or watching people having issues picking things up, that's my jam. So I like to be able to photograph and video that stuff.
Yeah, that's really important.
Yeah.
The physicality of people as they play is a really good indicator of stuff. So yes, that's when I often bring my tripod so I can just set up my phone and record the whole thing.
And it gives you a record of all of it as well. What was that thing that person said when they were trying to do blah? And you can go through it and find it and hear the exact language that they used, or the degree of frustration that they were experiencing as well. How annoyed were they? Wow, really annoyed. Okay, we need to deal with that. Were they just slightly annoyed? Okay, so we'll note that and see what someone else says. Yeah.
Also,
so
like the
comments from YouTube, I'll quickly just show it.
All right. Yep.
Stephen Preston says Alan getting a lot of exercise. I agree. I agree, Stephen. With Stuart also saying that I keep running back and forth. Not being very prepared. That is also a good note. Noted. I will also. No, in fact, I'm not going to listen to that. I think this sort of activity of going back and forth is far more interesting. I'll keep doing it.
Brilliant. I was going to say something. I've completely forgotten what it is. That's brilliant.
I'm sorry. I'm just here to bring the chaos energy.
Yeah, it's good. I'll just have to learn to adapt. All right. So I think. Oh, you were saying, Kate, about videoing. The other thing I think that's a good thing about videoing. I haven't had a lot of experience doing it myself because honestly, I'm too chicken to say to people, "Hey, are you okay if I video?" But one thing I think is good about it, or if I can watch a game being played, is even the non-verbal stuff or the things that people don't think to tell you that you've seen them do throughout the game, like how they've instinctively done things, how they've interpreted, the rules, or whatever. But then when you ask them for feedback, they might forget, like they might not be aware that they did something. And so I think that video thing can be a really good way of having a look at that. Yeah.
When we're user testing for interface stuff, we always ask people to think out loud. They can't really do that when they're testing a game because they're going to give away what they're planning on doing, unless it's an open test, in which case, cool.
Whatever,
that's the whole point of that. But
have you ever had people take issue with filming though?
No. I mean, I always say, look,
sometimes do you mind with little kids. So, and that's where I'm always really careful. Oh, sorry.
That's a really good point. Yeah. Really good point.
It's especially, and what I always do first up is I always clarify, I ask permission and I say where it's going as part of that. This is, personal use, won't go on the internet, anything like that. And if I am going to take photos that I want to put on my Insta, then I clarify that separately. And especially when there are little kids around, because that's a very touchy issue.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, taking photos. I tend to. I've over the last few years, I tend to not photograph people. I'll just photograph the board, like the table.
Yeah.
And or I'll say, hey, you okay if I put you in the photo, and then say I want to put it on social media or whatever. Yeah, it'd be right. Just that kind of respect. I think it's like that thing. If you were someone who didn't necessarily want everyone your picture on the world, how would you want to be? Would you want to be asked on that kind of stuff?
Yeah.
Especially important in Australia because we don't have any protection. Like you don't own your own image in Australia under Australian law. Anyone who takes a photo of you, they own that image and can do whatever they like with it.
Especially in a public space, right?
Yeah.
So,
isn't it? I agree, but I think it is more nuanced because I think you can still be. I think there are some protections for privacy and for identity, and certainly there are libel laws, so you can't someone couldn't use your picture, in a libelous way.
Ask a local solicitor for the actual.
Yes, for the drop the list.
We are not lawyers, and this is not legal advice.
That's right. Well, yeah, totally. It's not. It's. But I hear what you're saying. The photographer owns the image in the sense of copyright. Yeah. Interesting thought. All right. Are you okay if we move on? So before we go on to the main interview, we've got a quick word from our show sponsor who, surprise, surprise, again, is us. So let's roll the video. Launch Lab is our small batch print-on-demand service for tabletop games. Whether you want just 1 or 1,000, we have you covered. Select from our library of components to build your next game. We offer high-quality printing and components at a competitive price with fast production time, shipped to almost anywhere in the world. Go to launchtabletop.com to sign up for a free account and start prototyping now. Use the coupon code Materialise, that's MATERIALISE, at checkout to get 20% discount off your next order before shipping.
Whoever did the voiceover, I want that person to do my nighttime bed routine so you can slowly soothe me into sleep.
I'll let them know, all right? I absolutely like, as a small tangent, some of my favorite both podcasts, although I mostly watch them on YouTube, but they're still podcast type, or videos, is the ones where people are just calmly talking through their hobby, like whether they're building a computer, building a piece of furniture, talking about a historical, it's like history based, just whatever their kind of thing is. And I've really gravitate to these ones that are like really dry. There's no background music. There's often hardly any quick cuts. They're very long takes, and slow, and there is some silence. And I genuinely love it. I just find it so calming. And I learn stuff. So for me,
critical fail, and therefore I died.
Oh, yeah. I haven't watched any of that. What is that? Is it Critical? No, what's the name of the D&D podcast? Sorry?
Which one are you talking about?
Was it Critical Role or someone? Was that one
Critical
of the
Role
big
is
ones?
like playing D&D. Is that what you mean?
Yeah. No, I don't. I thought that's what Alan was referring to.
No, just ASMR and playing.
See, ASMR, I haven't gotten into. I know some people that are into it, but I don't know. It doesn't do it for me. It doesn't calm. I probably get more on edge than relaxed by it, if that makes sense. All the mic scratching and stuff, more thing sounds. All right, that's really maybe that's the channel. That's the second channel that we can start is a ASMR channel of board game components being punched out of punch boards or dice being rolled. Alan.
Even is actually suggesting.
So Stephen Preston just said Alan has ASMR with power tools. Perfect. That's wonderful.
Hey, don't threaten me with suggestions. It's going to happen.
I think the saying is, don't threaten me with a good time.
So let's move on to the main bulk of this podcast and this episode, where we will be chatting with Steve around our topic of no pain, no game. Essentially, my experience making games is that there are a lot of pain points and parts of the process that can be difficult to kind of work through, or cause you to kind of be negative about things. And I'm just wondering from Steve, and obviously from Kate and Alan as well, how do we deal with these things? How do we deal with the stuff when it's not going right, or people don't like our game or whatever? So, Steve, has your experience been anything like mine? Do you ever get anything like mine? Do you ever get the wind knocked out of you during the process of making a game? And if you do, how do you keep going?
I like this topic, but I think the probably the better question is, when do we not get the wind knocked out of us?
When everyone loves our game and we're making millions of dollars, isn't that how it works?
Yeah. There are the moments where things are working can be often far between. I mean, when I first started doing game design and I had a game that I just couldn't figure out how to make work, I actually gave up for a while because I was just I have no idea how to make this any better. It doesn't quite work. Guess I can't do this. And I think it's really important to understand that this is a skill, and you're actually going to have a lot of trouble with it with your first, X games, however many that is. In fact, if you're always learning, you're always going to be hitting pain points, and if you're always pushing yourself. So we don't expect to become a good drawer overnight. There's a lot of people I wish I could learn to draw. You have to spend years and years practicing. And the same is true as game design. And it is a lot of work, and it's frustrating, and a lot of it is hitting pain points and bashing your head against the wall. And there's a lot of that's just in the design. Then there's dealing with the industry and all of that, which is a whole other world of hurt. It's not
one thing you just Sorry, one thing you just said about the taking years to draw. I think it was going around on the Bird site a little while ago, to do with basically make crappy games. Like, just go make crappy games. Like, don't feel you have to make the best game. And it's echoed by, I think, some of the, in art circles where people just draw. It doesn't, who cares if it's crappy? Who cares if it's stick figures? Who cares if it even doesn't look like anything? Just, if just have a go, just enjoy yourself. Don't, and I think that's an attitude that I had not really brought to making games, and it's helping, it's percolating into my brain to kind of go, I don't need to always be trying to work on the best thing or the most marketable thing, or sometimes just actually doing something is the point.
Absolutely.
It's a bit like athletes. Athletes don't just play the game, like the footy players they're just not, always, I only do this when I'm playing a game. They spend loads of time training. That's they practice throwing the ball to each other. They kick it. They, if it's Aussie rules, then they're off to the other person. It's all valuable. It's all important. And it's all building skills and making you better at stuff. And it applies to anything. It's just,
and I'm assuming a lot of them,
zone.
Yeah.
That's not a skill.
But the sports analogy is a good one, because it's also, people would do it primarily, initially, certainly, because they enjoy the process of doing it. It's not actually about accolades or necessarily becoming the best right away. It's just oh, this is enjoyable. I like playing this sport or being on this team or whatever it is, and I guess the same as could be said for theatre and arts and dancing and the process. Yeah, it's a good point.
I accidentally stumbled upon a solution when I was publishing, and it's just by virtue of publishing lots of games, and that is when you hit a brick wall on a particular game, instead of trying to kind of just ram it out, and trying to get it all sorted, because we were having to juggle many different designs, many different ideas, you're forced to move yourself away from that particular title, and you're now developing a different game. And just by virtue of doing something different, doesn't mean that your brain isn't still percolating with that problem in mind, right?
That's right.
As you're developing this other game, suddenly your head just goes, oh, actually, this thing that I'm doing that's completely unrelated to this other game, I now know how to solve this other problem. Just because you're still practicing your art, your skill.
Maturation can mean spending time away from it. Yeah, just letting it
time off, do it as a different design. Have 3 or 4 different designs that are slightly different. One that has mechanics heavy, one's narrative heavy, whatever you want to do, and you can jump around as you're doing it. You don't necessarily have to perfect your one game.
It's funny because I intellectually I know all this stuff. I'm just going to be a TMI. This is going to be a very honest podcast. So intellectually I get all this stuff, but I absolutely, especially during COVID, but it happened before, just struggled. Especially in the 2020 and 2021, it was so hard to have the motivation to work on a game. And I think for me, there's a billion reasons why it was difficult, and some of them are game design world related, other ones are just my life related. But one of the ones that I found, and I still am wrestling with this honestly, is what's the point of making games when there's already so many games and so many really, really good ones? How do I, what am I trying to do here? And I keep giving myself answers to try and frame it to give myself a purpose, but I'm still not really sure how to answer the question, because I think if it's from a business point of view, well then that's fine, but obviously there is this huge cliff of how do you get from being a designer with no, you're starting out or whatever, or you're not a big name or anything, how do you get to the hurdle up to the level where you're actually selling games and able to fund some of your life from it? So there's that kind of part, but then there's also just I guess the artist part of me that's just there's already 500 games that do kind of what I'm wanting to do, but they also do it really well. And what am I going to bring to the table with my thing? So I guess with each of you, so I'll start with Steve and then we'll go around maybe. So Steve, do you ever think any of those thoughts? If you do,
I've got a comic on my wall at home, which is just someone going going, oh, look, I made something. And then they look at the window and there's other people making things and they go, oh, now I don't want to make anything anymore. And sometimes I'll get on Twitter in the morning or on Facebook and there'll be a bunch of people showing off their games. And we're just like, yep, lost all my motivation. It's really easy to compare yourself to others. And social media makes it worse because it's just a stream of others. And most people, are promoting their products. So you get
it's a stream of very curated others. They're being very, very careful about what they're putting out there in the world.
That's right. They're showing
and
all their
we're
success.
Constantly comparing I just started on this thing with I finished this thing and now it's in all the stores. And that's right. That's a crushing comparison to make. But it's hard not to because we're humans.
Yeah. It is very hard not to. And we've built our lives around sort of, sometimes the first thing in the morning I open my phone and then I get hit with this. Which isn't a good idea. So I think the first thing is being aware of what's coming into you and what's making you think these things, because you can actually control those things. You don't have to be a sort of it's very easy to just go, oh, I feel bad, so I must be bad, but it's probably because of your environment and the thoughts that are coming in. But there is always going to be comparison. One thing that helps for me is and I've done this, is to look into how other people deal with this, and especially, and that's in other arts as well. If you read about any other artist in any other art form, and that can be, anything you're interested in, everyone struggles with this issue. Everyone struggles with what's my contribution? Why do I deserve to be here? It's a real issue of qualification that all artists face. And it's particularly hard. You can see how in some disciplines, every movie is slightly different. So you can just go, well, my story is going to be a bit different. But games are very much about processes. So it's even harder to just go, well, where's the place for this when it's just not that far from those other processes. And look, it's, as I said, acknowledge what's coming, acknowledge that this is difficult as well, that everyone struggles with this. And there is a lot of things that talk about this, though, and a lot of artists make movies and books and things about where the characters are kind of struggling with these issues. And for me, a lot of the thing comes back to is that it doesn't, an audience is really vital. That's part of art, but I also try to make sure that I'm doing this for me. So, and that's something that helps me. It's if nobody sees this, it doesn't matter, because I need to make this for me to be expressing something that I believe and think and create. And it doesn't matter if nobody needs it, I need it. But also I find another thing is that you don't have to change everyone's world. You just have to change one person's. And the thing about the huge flood of games out there at the moment is that it's hard for a game to change a lot of people's lives, but people are sort of stumbling into that as well, and also being inundated. But they'll pick up one game and they'll go, oh, I really like this one, and they may even let you know. And that's the other thing, is that if you can concentrate on, I think it was Eric Lang who said, don't try to make a game that's everyone's favorite game. Make a game that is one person's favorite game.
Yeah.
That's an incredible thing to focus on, because if you can do that, you've done a great thing to that person, because at that moment they needed your game, and that's the thing that art can do.
Yeah, I remember hearing the video game developers who made Crossy Road and a couple of other games that did really, really well, like Aussie ones. I remember hearing an interview with one of the main people from that, and they very much had they would, when they're working on a game, they would basically pick a person, whether a real person or a fictional person, and go, we're making the game for this person. So it might be my grandpa. Okay, well, what's my grandpa like? What's his things that are going to, influence him, or that he would want? And they really try and do that. And I feel like that's something that I try and do, but it can be really hard because you also want to make, like for me, I just want everyone to love my game. Like I want to make it as, my games as accessible and as like, easy for people to kind of pick up and whatever. So sometimes I feel like there's a tension there of like focusing on that small, like a singular kind of individual or group and the bigger one. But the other point that you made also about the influences on us, one thing for me that I've had to do in the last couple of years is stop following or being a part of even like groups, Discords or chats or like following, Facebook pages or YouTube videos of players, like people who just people play games. And partly because and I'm not having a go at them because they need to manage their money and their time, they will be ranking games and going, these are the ones that are really good and these are the ones that are not very good, these ones are worth your money, these aren't, or your time. And people will use very emotional language when they're talking about this stuff because obviously it's personal for them. But for me as a creator, there's that part of me that's just like, oh, you're just saying that 50 of these games that are out right now are terrible, and only one of them is worth people's time. Whereas my attitude is a bit more generous, and I'm kind of like, oh, I won't be as maybe what's the word, discerning. Maybe I'll yeah, but I can kind of get where they're coming from because if there are, like I think Kate, you said the last week or the week before, something like 10,000 new games every year are getting released, or there's like it's something crazy, and so I can understand from a customer's point of view, they obviously don't have unlimited money, most of them, so they're wanting to go and time, so they're wanting to go where I only want to buy the ones that are actually gonna be the best use of my money and time, and so that's why you're going to get a lot of opinions about that. But as a creator, there's a part of me that just gets crushed because I'm like, oh, I'm never going to make a game that's like going to be on someone's top 10 list, and yeah, it's one of those things, and yeah.
I've got something I want to say, and for the next 58 seconds, it's going to sound like corporate shill.
Okay.
So just bear with me. Listen carefully, though, because unfortunately, I am the poster child of Launch Tabletop. So whatever I say actually does resonate with the company. So that is why, like, the sentiment that you're having is why Launch Tabletop exists. Now it sounds like it's advertising speak. It's not. Think about the fact that the struggling artist trying to make a game successful, trying to make hit it big, but then designers saying, don't make it for the market, make it for the one person. The way that you do that is, and this is something that I wanted to do, and Launch Tabletop kind of formed around this, is that I wanted to create a game about me being a person who is self-identifies as an Australian, but have good sort of cultural experience, and I love Taiwanese street food, but I'm not a native. But every time I go back to Taiwan, that's the thing I draw to, and that's sort of I identify. Basically, I'm an Australian person. I'm like through and through culturally Australian, except for one part, which is I'm 100% Taiwanese street food. Like, if you can personify street food concept of the person. So how do I make a game that is so specific that only like a handful of ABCs, Australian-born Chinese, can identify with, and how do you make that successful? Well, Launch Tabletop is a small-scale. That's the whole point. Is I'm not trying to make something for the for the marketplace. Now, the more people that can identify with the kind of games that I make, because I'm specific to my experiences, then it's authentic, right? I'm not trying to make it for mass production, anything else, and I also don't have to compare with anybody else because. Who else is going to be making a Australian-born Chinese, game that's about going overseas to the the Taiwanese street food? Who else is stupid enough or care enough to do that? Well, it's only me. So then I'm not really comparing with anyone else, and it's doing a game that is very, very important in terms of what I want. And if one other person can identify with that or learn from that or appreciate it, then that's great. That's successful to me. And that's why.
And it also, yeah. Well, what you just said also, like, Kate introduced me to a group a few weeks ago on Facebook, which is called Small Batch Publishers or Small Batch Publishing. And I've fallen in love with that group. Like, I haven't posted a ton, but it is absolutely like pushing all of my buttons of like, okay, I think this is the path forward for me. Aim to only make really small batches of games, focus on what I'm passionate about, and not try and focus on massive sales. Like, not saying that I deliberately want to do things at a loss, but like, still, like for me personally, I'm in a position where I've got a day job, so my base needs are covered by that. So for me, making games I can treat a bit more as a hobby. And so thinking of it like that, and so I think, yeah, that I'm definitely looking, like one of my goals for next year is to actually try and print a game, like a small batch game, and start a little tiny company. But I don't know if I actually will do it, but it's on my list of things that I want to try. And I think that what you were saying, Alan, though, like that idea about like, and combined with this other group, it's like just thinking in terms of, I guess, more like artisanal creation. So that like the same as the people that make small batches of whatever. I don't drink, but like beer and stuff, or whatever it is, they crafted items, and I think thinking of games that way, it's not natural for me, because I tend to think more mass, like you're printing hundreds to thousands of units and trying to get it into shops and blah blah. But and obviously there is absolutely a place for that, because we need those as well. Like I love the fact that I can have a game that I can recommend to my family in Queensland and they can walk into a shop and get it really easily. Like that's definitely a good thing. But for me as a creator and a small creator, the idea of like something that kind of that more personal, or changing the expectations, it's certainly on my roadmap for where I want to be next year.
It's sort of, it's not quite the right analogy, but if you made a movie, you wouldn't necessarily try to make a Hollywood movie, right? You would understand that there's a huge barrier to get to whatever that is. And obviously there are, you can make a little game and pitch it to a company and things like that. I've got a game that's being published by a very big publisher, and that's really exciting. But awesome. You might also go, look, this is a game that I want to play with my group, or this is a game that I'd like to give to my kids, or is about, I reckon this is for maybe an audience of 50 people. So let's print 50 copies. And we've sort of, the lure of Kickstarter has made a lot of things possible, but it's also, I think, made people go, well, if it's not marketable or publishable, it mustn't be worth doing. And
or if it doesn't get thousands of people like hyped,
right, if it doesn't get thousands of plays, and it doesn't get Simon numbers or something. And it's
I think a lot of people probably don't realize this, and probably it's worth kind of highlighting. But you know how Instagram, you've got these models that go, whoops, I just fell out of bed looking like this. And then you realize that in the background, they've actually spent like 3 hours, and they have a team of makeup artists doing the whoops, photo. Well, same thing with Kickstarter, right? Kickstarter, you look at those and go, oh, wow, this is such a tiny studio, Rule and making this game. Well, let me tell you that your budget for a Kickstarter is between $20,000 and $40,000 per campaign. And that's how much you're spending before you even get into. And that is the for us, we put up the video to say, we're a humble little studio doing this and that, but behind it is $20,000 in a small game, and in a bigger budget game it's between $40,000 to $80,000, right? So is that really true to the spirit of indie, development? No, it's not. Like, if you're just spending a couple of grand, you're not going to get anywhere with Kickstarter. It's just, again, it's all kind of smoke and mirrors.
But it is. I mean, I agree with you, Alan. But I think there are also, like, I have seen a number of, I'm going to say, small like Kickstarters that they get maybe 200 backers,
really well with small.
but they do, like they hit their niche really well, and they do that, and I guess they also find ways. So Steve, I know you've got a Kickstarter coming up in the near future, and I think it'd be good to. I mean, we don't have to talk about the game heaps unless you really want to, because it's like relevant to this. But I think what I've understood of what you're trying to do is, because this is called The Score, is that right? Is that the one that's coming up? Yeah. And right. You're trying to kind of bring people who wouldn't normally be interested in that kind of game. Because do you want to just give us a little description or a pitch or the elevator pitch for it? Or?
So, The Score is an 18-card, 18-minute storytelling game that has some of the elements of role-playing games and some of the elements of games you might have played, like Rory's Story Cubes or For the Queen. or Fiasco. It's adjacent to role playing, but it feels quite different, and it's very short and very simple. And a lot of our goals are trying to think about trying to get into some of the trends in the market that we're seeing. We know that some people love role playing games because they're a lifestyle, because they demand a lot from you, and you need to study them a little bit, and you go in for a long-term campaign. We're going to try to go the other way. We're trying to make a very small game, a very compact game. And also on our mind with that is trying to keep our costs down, because we are trying to, we're a much, much smaller company than even Rule and Make it was, right? They're a tiny company. We're sort of microscopic, I guess you might call it. But we're thinking like, if we can, so we're always looking for how do we to compete. Like, we can't compete where it comes to big boxes and loads of minis because we just don't have the volume. So we can maybe compete if we make just a little card game or just a small book. The very first game we put out was Baby Dragon Bedtime, was just 72 cards. This thing is just 36 cards. And it's designed to be, because that allows us to really cut our costs as much as we can, so that we can put money that we do have into the art and into the experience. And it's a good example, I guess, of there's lots of different priorities and lots of different ways to make a successful game and to negotiate this territory. And again, that comes back to not necessarily going, well, everything has to be, a shiny new Euro game from Rio Grande or something, and those games aren't like the games that Simon puts out. And yes, so whether you
I think one of the things that interests me about the score, because I'm not, I don't have an RPG role playing game background, but one of the things that interested me was this intention of yours to try and, I guess, make it accessible or make some of the elements of it accessible to a different audience, and that definitely, interested me to as someone not in that world, to kind of take a look. And I think that also ties back to what we were saying earlier about the niche, kind of like making a game for a certain type of player as opposed to trying to make it for everyone. Like, I
mean, in a sense,
so Stuart on the comment mentioned that you got the Resistance vibe from the score.
The Resistance,
what do you think about?
Look, the Resistance is, again, a lovely little small package, but it's a social deduction game. And it's competitive. The score is all working together to tell a story. But the Resistance also has that sense of being a team of people pulling off a heist. So there's a little bit of an overlap there as well. And what I really hope is, that we can try to get to people who are sort of outside a certain kind of audience. As much as picking one person is good, I find that if you make too many assumptions about your audience, you may lose people who could be your audience. And as gamers sort of become very much collectors, and the kind of audience that you were talking about before, Eris, those people are often very hyper-focused on certain kinds of experiences. And people outside that have different priorities and play in different ways. And it is very careful to think about not letting too much of that curate your opinion. Someone was talking to me the other day about, what if it gets on Board Game Geek that this puzzle game I've got is solvable if you do X, Y, and Z. And I was trying to, he's right that there's an audience on Board Game Geek, but it's certainly not all of your audience. It may not even be anywhere near the majority of your audience. It might be 5% of your audience. And it's very easy to get tunnel vision and go, that's what the audience is, or that's what gaming is. That's what success is. Absolutely.
So we're getting close to our time, and we've got our world famous Materialise questionnaire still to do at the end of this episode. So I just want to make sure we have time for that. So I've got one more, I guess, question/comment. Leading question is probably the best way of saying it. How important for you, Steve, is being connected to a community of game designers like the playtesting group or like online groups for motivation? Because I think for me, that's like the reason why I keep making games, is because I want to turn up to these events and play them with other design. Like I want to be a part of the community, if that makes sense. And I get a lot of value from being in the community in terms of friendships and other things. Is that something? How? Yeah, I guess. Or do you kind of tend to work more kind of by yourself, or does the community stuff matter? Like, yeah.
Look, I think community can be incredibly vital. To come back to sort of the thing about being in like a Facebook group with a lot of buyers and players, it's good to be in a group with other creators because then you understand their priorities. But it also comes back to, I think, what we're talking about having different goals and different ideas for success. Not every community or every part of a community is going to work for every person. And there have been times when people are saying, oh, you've really got to get on X because everyone there is talking about role-playing games or something that you're designing, and the community doesn't suit me, or they're just not, they don't have the right vibe. And I feel like if I'm not on that community, I must be failing because that's where the successful game designers are. But if I go to that community, I end up feeling worse and designing less. And the error, I guess, of that is that you should never do anything that takes you away from making games, and you should look for things that help you make games. So if you join a community and you feel like you're not welcome there, or you're just not getting, like, it's just making you feel worse, you're not getting something out of it, then it's absolutely okay to just go, look, I'm going to step away from that. That's not helping me. I find it's really good to have people around me for when I'm hitting walls, when I'm feeling frustrated. That kind of thing is super important to me. And so that's the kind of thing that I look for when I'm thinking about who I'm going to follow. If someone's just out there, and again, nothing wrong with them, but if they use their social media, for example, to just go, here's my latest game, I'm just going to promote it every day, and I don't really talk about how I design or being an artist, that's not useful to me. That's going to make me feel bad, maybe. And that might be a person or a community or something like that. And yeah, that's the thing. I think it's all about being practical. Why I like the events is that they force me to make a prototype, and that's sometimes I drag my feet on.
Gives you a push.
For me too.
Making things physically is hard, and then it looks bad, and I feel like it's not going to work. But if I know that once a month we're having this event, and I need to put my game in front of people, I'll finish it, I'll get it, and I'll take it there. So that's
100% with you on that. Yeah, same for me. I think that's one of the, from a purely like getting stuff done point of view. I used to help run incubator in Melbourne, so playtesting group, and then and obviously I've just started coming into the Sydney one, and I absolutely think that kind of regular deadline of like, okay, I'm going to meeting with these people. I want to test the game. I better make those cards. I'm gonna, even if it's just Sharpie on the bit of paper, like I better do something to take along. Yeah.
And there's a lot to be said as well for community, being in a group of people who are dealing with the same sorts of problems or issues, or, this thing that I'm trying to do, it's not working, and them going, I was there last week. I know exactly how you're feeling. This is what I did. Is there anything you can learn from that? It's really important to have that community. And I think something else that came out of what you were saying before, Steve, about being around people who lift you up rather than kind of it's really important for people to recognize that they do have agency. Anytime something happens, even if you don't realize it, you do have the ability to say, I just felt this way about that thing that happened.
Yeah.
Is that reasonable? Is that logical? Was that just, I've had a really shitty, pardon my French, day, and this was just the last thing I needed? Was there a grain of truth to it? It's pushing back on that stuff that you feel. It's like, was there actually something bad there, or am I just feeling a little bit sensitive? Or should I really be feeling bad about that? You do have that agency. We all do.
Yeah.
And it's very hard to always remember that.
Absolutely. And it's not that anyone, particularly on social media where you're not sitting in a room together, that person doesn't know you're reading it. So you're there having a bit of a bad day, and they're like, oh, I just finished this game, or I signed this game. And you're like, hey, don't tell me that. But they didn't know how you were feeling. And so you can't ever ascribe any kind of motive or negativity to that. And as you say, it might be just what you're feeling or whatever. It's no comment on them. I think it's something we say on Twitter. It's like, there's nothing bad about unfollowing someone. If you don't feel up to it,
absolutely,
because it's not about them. It's just like, I need to step away for a second.
Yes.
And
Unless you're trying to unfollow me, and then you better explain yourself.
That's right. Yeah. But you can come back another day and just go, look, I can't follow you right now, but or you can turn off your phone.
That's definitely been a hard lesson for me. I struggle with that because I feel like some people I'm like, oh, if I stop following them and they find out, will they take it personal? Like, and I've had to wrestle with that. It's a and there are some
and they have a negative reaction. That's on them. Their emotions are their emotions. They're not yours to manage. It's for them to manage, and that's something I think everybody in the entire world would do well to remember more of.
Yeah.
You are not responsible.
Don't you
for
do this as well,
else's
Iris? I think you've done it once before. The annual culling, the annual social culling.
I've done it. Yeah. I'm
so
now
you just
down
say-
to.
You just say to everyone to say, hey, just as a post, I'm doing my annual spring cleaning.
Yeah.
If you get unfollowed, I'm doing this en masse. And if you feel like you're I don't know, I somehow accidentally unfollowed you because I'm doing them en masse, you can let me know. But I'll just do this annually anyway. So it's no.
I did. I used to a few years ago. Had thousands of, over 1,000 Facebook connections, and it was just too much. And I think I'm now about 250 or 280 or something. And it just took me kind of like over a few years, every few months, I'd be like, I need to reassess my relationship to this platform and to the group of people on here. And I do regret some of it. There are some people who, when I've been coming, because I have depression, so when that's kind of bad, I'll come out of that for a bit, and I'll be like, oh, I've kind of unfollowed 50 people, and now I regret some of that because some of them are like people I really care about. But in the peak of my depression, or pit of my depression, I was like, couldn't handle whatever. Yeah. And what I think Steve was saying before, like sometimes it is people who are just their lives seem better than mine, and I'm like, I don't want to hear that. It's not that's not where I want to be. But yeah. But I think it's also, for me, the perspective thing is that acknowledging that there is an ebb and flow to it, that also with a lot of these, even the relationships, like one thing I've learnt this year specifically is I went to a convention called BorderCon at the start of the year, or middle of the year, sorry, and a lot of people who I know there I'm not connected to on social media or anything, and it was one of the first times where I really felt okay just to say, okay, we're just people who we meet at a convention, we get on, we have a great time, but we don't need to be like friends anywhere else, like or like in social media and stuff, and that's okay. Like, it's okay just to have people who you see once a year, and that is the nature. Yeah, basically, yeah. And I think that was a bit of a growth for me personally, was to kind of go, I can have these people who I only touch base with every once in a while, and doesn't mean the friendship or the connection is any less valid. So oh, that was a tangent. Kate, did you have one last thing you wanted to ask Steve or mention?
I do.
Bring up?
Steve, when's the Kickstarter?
February the 15th is our launch date.
February 15.
And we have a
Valentine's
page.
No, 14th is Valentine's.
Have you
sorry, what's
putting the page together yet?
Yeah, do you have a link I can stick up on the screen?
Yep. Let me put that in the chat. So we've just put up our full launch page. You can also just go to tinstargames.com and find out all about the score. And we've actually got the full print and play of the game, of at least an earlier draft, but all the rules are there, all the cards are there. You can
is that URL correct, Steve?
That is URL is correct for our website. Yep.
And I've seen some lovely art for the box going past as well.
Awesome.
Sorry.
Yeah. So we've got some prototypes coming from Launch Tabletop. Great place to get early prototypes that you can send to reviewers. That's look really flash. It's a great example of a way to use a
I genuinely had no idea that you had stuff printed through us. That's funny. I'm so out of the loop on some of these things. Oh, it's wonderful. Yeah.
There's my
I had to talk him into trying the mint tin.
Okay.
Try the mint tin.
If you guys are having trouble remembering the date, the launch date, February 15th, just remember that's also my daughter's birthday.
Oh, there you go.
Of course. I'll definitely remember that.
Fantastic. Day after Valentine's Day.
Yeah, well, as you get closer to the campaign date, make sure you let us know so that we can put it up on the Facebook page and
Awesome.
those sorts
Absolutely.
of things.
Yeah, we will.
We may even try and get you back around that time. We'll see what happens. Obviously scheduling is a thing, but maybe we'll try and catch up
yeah.
because and because I know one thing about you, Steve, is that you've got like a lot of there's so many metaphors, a lot of pots on the go, a lot of spinning plates, a lot of things that are happening. And so I think
wait, that's a different one.
irons in the fire. Sorry, Alan.
Fingers in pies.
Kids in the pool, but I think that's different.
It's a bit different.
I just pictured a whole lot of baby goats in a pool, like swimming in a pool, like with flotation device, like toys and stuff.
There's got to be a game in that, surely.
Yeah, kids in the pool. But so where I was going with all these terrible metaphors or similes or whatever analogies is, I think Steve, there's plenty we can talk to you about in the future on a whole variety of topics and
So how long is the campaign going to be?
It's going to be 14 days, a very short one. I find that's better for us. But yeah, also people can follow me on Twitter or on Facebook. We're Tin Star Games almost everywhere. We're Tin Star Games with a number 1 after it on Twitter. I talk about a lot of the things we talked about today. So I try to share the struggles and the stress and things like that. So if you're interested in wanting to hear some of that and see how the sausage is made, as it were, I'm always talking about that sort of stuff. And if you've got any questions for me, you can also find me there. Ask anything.
What was the Twitter?
It's
handle
at
again?
Tin Star Games with a number 1 at the end.
I think I typed it right. Is that correct?
Yep, that's it. Correct. And
Nice.
Tin Star Games on Facebook, on TikTok, on Insta, and all sorts of new platforms we're experimenting with. Yeah, and that's
And I just put up the Kickstarter link.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think we need to wrap it up.
Yep.
We do.
We didn't. It's been great.
Yeah, so it sounds like you want to do the wrap up, Kate. Did you want to do the wrap up? That was unexpected.
Sure.
I mean, I'm happy for you too. If you want to take over the host a bit for a second, go right ahead, do the wrap up.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today, Steve. It's been great. I'm really looking forward to seeing the score triumph on Kickstarter. I'm also looking forward to seeing how the mint tins come out because they look like the art looks fantastic. I'm really excited about that. Thank you, everybody else, for joining us. Eris, Alan, everybody who joined in the comments this week.
Alan, your first time.
Stephen.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
Maiden
No,
voyage.
that's it. Thank you for joining us. It's great. None of Alan's friends joined us this week. What a shame.
Not one of
As
Alan's friends
always.
turned up.
Yeah, I know. It's disappointing, wasn't it?
They don't want to hear me.
Conversation. As always, if you have ideas for topics or would like to ask questions for a future show, hit us up on Discord. Somebody throw the Discord banner up if you would,
I'm getting
please.
to it. There we go. Done. Yep.
Or if you want to pick our brains on game development or producing things, anything related to bringing games to life, come chat to us. I'm not Eris. I'm Kate, sort of your host. And you've been watching Materialise. See you all next week.
All right. And I'll just do one more little plug for if you do want to check out Launch Lab, head over to launchtabletop.com and use the code Materialise at checkout for 20% off your next order before shipping. And it's totally free to create an account and just play around with the system. So just give it a go. All right, so we'll do our outro video and then we will do our questionnaire with Steve. And let me just... I'm pressing buttons wrong now. I've got to hide this. Well, I'm trying to hide this banner, but I'm not doing a good job. There we go. All right, so you got the video?
I've got the video.
Wonderful. All right, we are back, and this is the Materialise questionnaire at the end for those that really want to stick around, but also convenient for us to cut off and put into a separate video in the future if we decide to do that. Nice. So what we will do is it's 5 questions. Steve, you will be judged by how you answer these, so just take it with that gravity of, or gravitas. Question 1 is... I think we're 2 of us pressing it. That's okay. Yeah, that's funny. Okay, so question was: are you more of a heart, a diamond, a club, or a spade?
I'm a spade.
Yeah.
Ah.
Spades, yeah.
Ace in the hole.
You want to explain your answer, or are we just going to go with spade and move on?
I think
Just a-
I think I just as a kid I've always liked playing cards, and
Yep.
the sets, the Queen Slippers we have the very flashy Ace of Spades compared to all the others.
Yeah.
So
With the
that's
beautiful
probably why it appealed to
engraving
me.
kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, yep. Yeah,
Good
and
answer.
it's just-
I'll accept that.
Yeah, you strike me as a spade. Yeah.
Dinosaurs who are pirates or robots who
Hang
are
on, no, I was getting an ace of spades ready. I was looking in my little deck of
Yes,
cards that I happened to have, and it was a Queen Slipper brand too, and everything. Oh boy, this is our modified question because literally everybody seems to have a problem with the old question. So I've tried to make it better.
Right. So would you choose dinosaurs who are pirates or robots who are
I would
ghosts?
probably choose robots who are ghosts because I'm always fascinated by the idea of exploring robot supernatural elements. Like what as they say in Red Dwarf, what does robot heaven look like? And that's really a thing that's fun for me to explore. So I'll choose robots that are ghosts.
Nice.
What's your preferred drink or snack when playing a tabletop game?
It's got to be a cup of tea. I mean, that's just my favorite thing in life, and it's
Are you a Lipton's gent or a
usually
fancy
I have
Earl
at the
Grey?
moment we've got some Dilmah in the house,
Oh, yeah?
which is always good. But we also have some Bushels.
Mhm.
I'm perfectly fine with some of the good
Some of
Australian
the old
blends.
bog standard
Yeah,
milk?
yeah.
No milk?
Yeah, milk, no sugar. That's my how.
Lots of milk, or just a little bit so it's brown tea, not white tea?
I'm fine with either way. I'm not one of these people who are like, that's way too much milk.
Yeah.
Depends on.
Are you ever worried about? Are you ever worried about the mug getting knocked over though, like during a game?
I mean,
Because we had one of our first. Who was?
Yeah.
Who said? No, Alana. It was Alana. Alana had their experience was knocking over a drink, and so they never wanted to do that again.
tea is a bit easier to clean up than like Coke or beer, but it is also warm. I remember the very first times I played Robinson Crusoe, that big Ignacy Trezeic game. Someone was like they were passing the card over and they let go and it fell straight into my tea mug. So we had to replace a few of the pieces for that because
dear.
cardboard does not survive in tea.
No, not really. It's great.
But
I mean, that's terrible, but that's a fantastic story.
Yeah.
And we should print a deck of cards that has like coffee or tea stains built into it.
On them.
So
Very
that it's
done.
already
Yeah.
You can do that.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
no one will
And you don't have to worry. I mean, that's the thing. I want to protect my stuff, but I've also life's too short to be just like put everything on a coaster. Just I don't want anything to get sticky. Put it on a coaster and everything. But I'm also like I can buy a new game.
Yeah.
Next question: cards or dice? And answer
you look
this
at my
one
RPG
very, very carefully because I'm judging you.
Oh.
If you look at my RPGs, it's always going to be cards.
Correct
like-
answer.
That's the right answer.
I like to play with cards, and I also feel like you can get more information out of a deck of cards than you can out of a die.
Yeah.
As in a faster form. So yeah,
Nice.
I love my cards. I mean,
I
we
do
talked
like a
about
nice
Queen
card.
Slipper already. Yeah, I used to buy. There was always I used to play a lot of card games at uni and high school. So every couple of months, I'd be buying a new Queen Slipper deck for Bridge and 500 and things like that.
Yeah.
You just have to look at the hand gestures that are on the different ones, and you'll know which one's the winner. This is cards, and this is dice, right? So which one looks better to you?
Well, when you do them like that, they both look dodgy.
I look forward to releasing the audio only version of this podcast because I think it'll be more PG than what Alan just did.
Audience at home, please imagine what Alan was just doing.
Yeah, exactly.
Lucky last. You're having a game night. You're allowed to invite your favourite fictional character. Well, any fictional character doesn't have to be your favourite. Who are you inviting?
No, see, this is really tough.
And explain your working. Show your working.
Fictional characters. Well, I have just this week watched the amazing Knives Out sequel, Glass Onion, and I'm in love with Benoit
I
Blanc.
haven't seen it yet.
Oh, it's really
I
good.
would come to
I
that
saw it.
game night. That would be great.
I saw
Benoit
that
Blanc,
too. Loved it.
It starts with him actually playing Among Us because it's sort of set in COVID, and it's a delightful scene of him sort of trying to struggle through the technology of how this game works that he doesn't understand. And he just seems like such a delightful man to play games with. So yes, Benoit Blanc.
That is a brilliant
wacky
answer.
His accent is.
Yes. Oh, so good.
Yeah.
That's a great answer.
Yeah.
That's great.
And as a tangent, the movie is well worth seeing if you like, especially if you like the first one. But yeah, it's
I love the
a very
first
good
one.
movie.
The first one was lovely.
Yeah.
It was great.
And there's a bit of a reference to game playing and things like that.
There is.
There's a puzzle box to start with, and then there's a murder mystery before the actual murder, and there's even a discussion of the game of Clue, and I have like most game designers have strong opinions about certain popular games, and they talk about Clue, and my girlfriend was like poking me in the ribs, like they're talking like you do. Like are you gonna?
I am
thank
so
Ryan
bad
Johnson,
at Clue.
for including your opinions in this film, and I was like, yeah, it's nice.
5 stars.
Yeah,
I'm gonna watch it based on that.
Yeah.
Great film.
It's a fun ride. All right.
Let's
Well,
wrap it
I
up.
think that's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks everyone. Thanks Steve. Thanks Alan. Thanks Kate. I just
Thank
did it. I
you.
said thanks to everyone at once rather than individually. But yeah. All right. Cool.
It's been
See you
fun.
all. Yeah.
Next week.
See you in the future. Bye.
Bye.